All right, guys, we got David Asarnow on today, and I'm pleased. I got a chance to know David over the past year, and what I've actually realized is David is like the monetizer. Just like we got the Terminator out there with Arnold Schwarzenegger, David is the monetizer. This guy not only built a company from 0 to 45 million, but he did that with a shoe. And David, how the hell did you do that?
I did that because actually I was at the time I wasn't an entrepreneur yet. I was an employee for someone else. And what happened is I read a book and it was talking about big, hairy, audacious goals. Okay, good to great, and how companies really get great. And so I had asked for an opportunity to start a new division for this company that did about $68 million in sales. And I said I was going to be the largest division of the company in 5 years. I was going to be the fastest growing and the most profitable. And everyone laughed. Well, 6 months into it, I hadn't sold a customer. And the head of the company said to me, "Can you close an effing deal?" I mean, I remember it like it was yesterday when he said it to me. And it sort of lit a fire under me. And I said, what I'm doing isn't working. Okay, I was calling and I was calling and I was calling, and I'd stop in places and the large companies wouldn't see me. And it was building a national accounts division, and they laughed at first because they said, well, we can't do that because we're a smaller company compared to our competition. So remember this, if what you're doing isn't working, change your approach.
Okay, that's a huge point you just dropped right there. So there's so many entrepreneurs that I've seen, I've made this mistake myself, where it's like, you're trying to push a boulder up a hill, right? And that's one of those things where eventually the boulder's just gonna roll off top of you, and it doesn't work out so well financially. Causes problems in marriage, causes problems in business partnerships, causes problems for yourself personally. It's no fun. So it's a lot easier when you find those boulders that actually roll the different way. And I know you're really good at doing that. So let's give us some tidbits and some stuff that you guys can actually put into action for themselves.
Well, as you know, and because we become friends, we both are avid readers, and I'm a sponge. And I don't remember where I read it. I really don't. However, I was reading ideas it was lumpy mail at the time, and they were talking about sending these little trinkets out to people to get to get them to respond to you. And I said, forget that little trinket. I thought to myself, what does everyone open? Especially back then, they opened FedEx packages. So I wasn't even going to just send a FedEx envelope. I was going to send a box, a FedEx box. And I figure all I need to do is capture the attention. So if I could pick 5 clients that I want to do business with, who's number one? McDonald's. Why? Because we did custom plastic packaging at the time, and they have Sunday cups and different things that we could do.
Yeah, but David, who are you to tell them? I mean, you're nobody. You haven't sold anything to anybody, and now you're going after McDonald's. It's the biggest person out there. It's the biggest.
Well, I had sold before. I mean, I earned the right to. I was the top person in the company. Started as a district manager, became a region manager. I was the youngest person in management in the company, and I back when I was a region manager, I was doing about $14 million in revenue. So I was always leading the pack. So in my mind, they wanted to speak to me, and they just didn't know they wanted to speak to me. Okay, they may not know my company, so I got really creative, and I had to earn the right. Just getting my foot in the door wasn't going to be, because otherwise I'm like everyone else. So I started brainstorming, and I got together with my engineering team, and I got together with the design team, and I said, what is McDonald's better than anyone else? And they still are a global leader in marketing and branding. So one of the things that I realized even back then is they did a really good job visually, with their branding and their cups and the marketing they put out there. They had great TV commercials, so they got people visually and auditorily. One thing that they weren't doing back then was kinesthetic. So what's kinesthetic? It's touch. And the more senses you can ingrain with someone, the more they're connected to you. So I came up with an idea that we would emboss the M, the McDonald's M. It's that simple. Emboss the McDonald's M on the side of the cup, and like the car cups you see today that have the M's on it, I have the original concept drawings that we put out there. So anyway, what happened is I put a sneaker a brand new sneaker, not a little trinket, but a big sneaker. I'm size 14, so I used my size 14 sneaker, and I put it in a FedEx box, and I had a nice little note on it that said, Ken, now that I have my foot in your door, may I please have 5 minutes of your time? I'll be calling you on Friday at 10 a.m. to talk about how I can help McDonald's increase the brand recognition, presence, and profitability. David Asarnow. Now, I've been calling Ken probably for 4 to 6 months with no return phone call. The secretary always put me in the voicemail. They knew my name by now. Well, anyway, I made sure that they got it on Monday to give time. And I can remember when I picked up the phone to call, my heart was racing. It was like nervous, like crazy, like, is he going to take my call? Is this going to work? I thought it would. And anyway, I call, and I remember the secretary. She says, you're the sneaker guy. And I said, yes, I am. I said, well, I've got a meeting with Ken. And so she says, I'll put you through. So Ken says, okay, Dave, you got your 5 minutes. Go. So I said, Ken, I'd like to ask you 2 questions. He says, it's your 5 minutes. Do whatever you want. So I said, Ken, I want you to ask you 2 questions. And by the way, these are my multi-million-dollar questions. I literally,
down, folks, write them down.
I literally, I mean, and to this day, I use derivatives of it, and I teach clients derivatives of it. I want you to think of the best vendors. What do the best of the best vendors do better than anyone else? Now, the reason I wanted to know this, I wanted to know his benchmark, what he's looking for. And then I said, tell me more. Anything else? Great, thank you. And then I said, if the best of the best could serve you better in any way, how would they serve you better? He said, I wish they would bring us more creative ideas. I was like, booyah, I got it. Yes. I said, let me ask you a question, Ken. If I could show you that I could meet the best of the best and still yet show you something that I could actually meet something that they're not meeting, would you give me 15 minutes in front of you? He said, it depends. What is it? And I said, I came up with an idea, and I told the story of the auditory, visual, and kinesthetic, and I got an SLA. It was stereolithography. Back then, that's how you made prototypes. And I had it already mocked up because I knew that I was going to get in there. So I literally had my company invest not only the time, the engineering, the drawing, but about $750 in getting the mock-up made because I believed in it. And so what happened is I told him, I said, I got this SLA, he knew what it was, of a cup with embossing on the side. He says, can't you put that in a FedEx box and send it to me? I said, with all due respect, I've invested about $750. Can I be the FedEx box? And if you don't like what I have to see and say in that 15 minutes, kick me out of your office. You'll never have to hear or see from me again. And, you know, anyway, the rest is history. It turned into a couple hours, turned into lunch, turned into a meeting a couple weeks later in front of their whole product development committee where I had a presentation that showing McDonald's a bunch of creative ideas that I came up with. And it turned into $1.4 million within about 60 days. And they gave me a portion of one of their business lines to get my foot in the door to start building a relationship with them.
So let's look at some of the mental mindset you actually had behind that. First of all, right up front, you look like these individuals wanted to talk to me because they needed it, because you are the prize, right? And I've seen so many times with entrepreneurs, especially where they're constantly are going to give and they're trying to chase after business and stuff like that. You realize that you had something that could really provide further value to them. Because guess what? You know what? They're just McDonald's. There's a Burger King across the street, right? So you had other people you could probably bring the same idea to, you know?
Yes.
Number two, you went and used something that was outside of what's called the professional box, you know, and you did something that was different from everybody else, which obviously they like because it needs to be different in that kind of environment. That was the second thing you actually did, right? And the third thing, you believed in yourself, that you invested and made the prototype. So when you actually did have the opportunity, you were ready to go in there and get after it. And then when the 800,000 pound gorilla said to you, just put it in a box, you had enough balls to actually stand up and say, I'm actually the box. I'm bringing it to your door. So that's hands off, Dave. I mean, that's right there. Those are some gold nuggets to apply in your business.
Well, I want to tell every entrepreneur this because no matter what people say, I mean, there's a lot of companies out there like after that, Sam's Club and Walmart became clients of mine. Dairy Queen, International Paper. Okay. And I remember the day that Walmart decided to put, we had about $1.5 million in product with them. Okay. And I remember them, they put it out for bid. And I used to fly up to Bentonville. It actually used to be Springdale. Now it's Bentonville Airport. And I remember they put you in their little shoebox rooms. It's like that waiting game, and they turn up the pressure and the heat in it. And I remember having a meeting with our phone call from the buyer at Walmart, and they like, or at Sam's Club, and they said, "I'm sorry to notify you this, but you guys lost the bid. You were in 4th place, and we're gonna have to create a transition plan." And I said, "Can I fly up to see you tomorrow?" And they said, "There's no reason to fly up to see us because it's just a bid. It's a numbers game." And I said, "I like you, and I believe that you like doing business with me. Is that correct?" And they said, "Well, yeah, we like you. You're great. But you guys didn't win the bid." I said, "Can I have 5 minutes of your time?" And I said, "I'll fly in and I'll see you. And if anything, it's to thank you for the time that we did business together." And they said, "Okay, I'll give that to you." And I flew up there. In the meantime, what I did is I got together and I created a cost of change analysis, because I knew how many stores they had, how many distribution centers, and we would have had parts mismatches, which means they would have had to trash a lot of our product in order to bring the other product in. So I calculated what the price difference would be. I went to my company and said, "We don't want to go down and meet this, but can we come down this much? And that way I can show Walmart that there's a win to stay with us." And they said, "You think it's going to work?" I said, "Yeah, because it's a smart business decision, and Walmart makes smart bottom line business decisions." And I flew up there and I laid out my spreadsheet and I showed them. They just shook their head and I said, "What?" And they said, "I can't believe you came up with this." I said, "But it's true. And not only that, it's not only the parts. I didn't even calculate the time and your time and effort to accumulate all this and get rid of it, which makes it even a bigger savings to stay with us." And they just said, "Let me bring it to our team, and we'll get back to you." And we kept the business. So everyone always says,
the monetizer. There he is, the monetizer, folks.
Everyone always says that Walmart, you can't negotiate with them. They're business people.
That was David Asarnow. So maybe
I remember that like it was yesterday too. And gosh, that was well over 20 years ago.
They don't mess with it. Nobody messes with the Terminator, right?
Actually, it was probably about 15 years ago.
So Dave, honestly, tell us how you got the name Monetizer. Right? I know you shared that story with me before. It was at an event you were doing, and you
really actually one of my clients that I've been working with for about 5 years, give or take. They had a business, and right in the beginning, I was like, okay, they give me ideas and I tell them how they make money with it. And so it's sort of like if I come up with an idea that they need to do, they just implement because they make money. And in front of the whole group one time, when they were introducing me to come up and speak on stage, and he always pronounces my name wrong. Instead of Asarnow, he says Asarnow. By the way, you do that too. It must be a lot of people.
I'll do a push-up later.
It's okay. Everyone does. And anyway, he's like, he is the monetizer. I give him an idea. He knows how to make money with it. And, it was interesting because he used to say that to me all the time. He says it to me all the time, and it just rolled off. And then I was at a conference one time, really, when they were asking, what makes you different than anyone else? What do you do better than anyone else? What is that one thing that you can hang your hat on? And all of a sudden, those words came in my ear. And I realized that, and I changed my branding. I changed our tagline. We changed everything, and literally from that point, we were doing great, and then we exploded from there. And it's amazing that when you have that clarity on what you're great at and how you can serve other people, how everything can automatically changes.
The Gold Nugget just dropped right in front of you guys. If you didn't pick that up. Get your one thing. What is your one thing that you can do that's better than anybody else out there in the marketplace, and hang your hat on that one thing? And with David, it's on the monetization side when it comes to looking at people's businesses. Tell me a quick version of the doctors that you actually worked with at the event, and how much you actually turned their event into a revenue stream for them.
Well, it was interesting how I met these guys was totally by accident. I had someone else who was from the days that I was with Tony Robbins and Chet Holmes. In fact, one of the things that I helped there is they used to have ads on Sirius XM radio, and then people would come in on a phone for a free report. They'd sell them to a webinar, and then they would do a live interactive webinar, and they would sell people a $5,000 program, and they were converting about 19.1%. And I listened to what they were doing, and then all of a sudden I shifted how they were doing it. And within 90 days, we were able to get a 34% close rate, which is a 64% increase.
Yeah. So
we consistently ramped it up.
Look at the numbers on that, because I want to make sure people understand how much more money that David made Tony Robbins' program by doing that. So if they're at a 19.1% conversion ratio and you took it to 34%?
Yeah, 34.
So how much roughly more money would that be in the program? Because Tony's probably—
I mean, you're talking about millions of dollars.
Yeah.
But here's the interesting thing. I remember getting together with one other gentleman who happened to be the vice president, and we would literally go slide by slide. And, because I had background in NLP and hypnosis and the psychology, how do we reword this? How do we retool this? And to really understand, what is the person hearing? Not what we think we're saying, but what is the person hearing? And we literally took a couple months to re-engineer that presentation. And then once you got it, you got it.
Yeah. I remember you shared that story with me, and that was just blew me away. The amount of money they're able to make. Tony Robbins is doing really well, and here's the guy who teaches from stage and does the hypnosis and does all the breakthrough work with people live and all this stuff. And here it is, you come into his company and have that kind of impact that much. When was it that you became to the point where you were tired of working for somebody else and working as an employee, and you're like, it's about time that I go out and do this for myself?
It's interesting. I started a franchise company, and I'll call myself an entrepreneur at that point in time, because I started it, I did everything, I raised about $1.5 million, and yet I had a board of directors and investors. And the day that I knew that we had to go left, because the market was shifting, and I saw it, and I was fought on going left, and actually got in a little bit of an argument with one of the board members. And I said, "You think you can run this company better than me?" And he said, "I do." I said, "Well, it's yours. I'll give you guys 90 days notice." And he said, "What? What are you going to do?" I said, "I don't know. I'm going to be a speaker." And I don't know. But literally from that day forward, my life changed. And I started looking.
What was that now?
That was, I guess, 2009.
And what was that defining moment there where, there had to be a switch, because it only takes a split second to make a decision. You had to be thinking about that in the back of your mind. You've helped take companies from, 0 to 45 million to work with me.
We grew to where between on location and event place, we had over, if you count each studio event place, we had about 74. We were ranked in the franchise 500 of top franchise companies. That year before, I was ranked top 15 hot franchise company. I figured I sort of knew what I was doing as far as growing the revenue and growing the company. And, I knew that we had a shift. Cell phones were coming out, and it was a digital portrait studio, on location event photography. I was right. Things shifted. Well, I just got noticed that they closed the franchise company just this year. So, or last year at the end of the year. So
not my problem. So.
Not my problem anymore. And, but anyway, and I feel bad for some of the original franchisees, a couple of them, they've got a couple of them, but they're basically letting them stay open and use the name and everything. So that's good. And so, but interesting, that was the defining moment that I knew I had to do something. And frankly, I was lost for a couple of years. I didn't know what that thing was. I did consulting. People came to me, and it was interesting. After the Tony Robbins thing was in conjunction. So I did work with Tony and Chet. I became a vice president in the company, all while I had my own consulting business. What happened though is I had a lot of clients that I was doing consulting for that needed web work, needed marketing automation, needed things. And I said, well, who's the best of the best? Because I'll refer them out. And what happened is I referred them out, and they didn't do a good job. And they came back to the person that referred them.
Got it.
And well, I've built businesses, I built companies, I've had teams. So I said, I'll take care of it for you. They said, how are you going to do it? I said, I'm going to hire someone. You don't have to pay me. I'll take care of it, because I like to make things right.
Yeah.
So I made it right. And believe it or not, that's how my business was born, by just making it right for some other people. But interesting, you asked me a question. Before this, you asked me, how did the whole thing with the doctor start? And it actually is because of Tony Robbins. So the person who was the vice president of sales for the company before the person that I re-engineered with knew who I was, knew how I changed everything. People just knew who I was. And he approached me on potentially working with this other guy, and helping him re-engineer sort of his business and do it sort of that kind of model as well. And I heard he was going to be in Atlanta speaking at a doctor's conference. And I said, I'll pick you up from the airport, and I'd like to see you speak. And he said, no, I'm flying in, flying out. It's not a big deal. And I just said, I insist. So I picked him up from the airport, went there, and it was a different kind of doctor's conference. It was talking about the body and how it has the ability to heal itself naturally. And all of a sudden I started hearing things, autoimmune, et cetera, and I was on the edge of my seat. And then this gentleman spoke, and then he just said to me, I'm going to dinner with these guys, thanks, I'll take myself back to the airport. Well, anyway, the main person whose conference is says, you love this stuff. And I got a big smile, and I'm like, yeah, how could you tell? He said, you're like a puppy dog. He always says that to me too. He's like, you're a puppy dog sitting in your seat. You were just like the biggest glow, like you just learned something that you'd never heard before. I said, it's because I did. And he said, why don't you come back tonight? He said, why don't you come to dinner with us? I said, no, because I was already not invited to dinner by this guy. So I said, that's okay. I've got plans with my wife. And he said, why don't you come back tonight? And I said, well, I don't know. That's my wife. I've got plans with my wife. He said, bring her. So anyway, I told Jen that we were going to go back, and she's like, we're going where? What? And at the end of the night, him and his business partner came up, gave me a hug, and said, thanks for coming. Since you love this stuff, why don't you come tomorrow? We've got a business session with our doctors, and I know you're a business, trainer and coach and speaker. Why don't you just come and you can listen to what we do? And I showed up, and they were like, they're like, I showed up that day and I never left. And what happened is, what happened is, how when you speak at someone's event, it's customary to give them a percentage of something because you're taking their stage time, and
sure,
frankly, the person told me that. I'm like, well, I knew what he sold. It was like 38,000. I said, well, they made pretty nice. Like, I'm not giving them anything. And I'm like, you're what? Because I know the business, it's like doing the right thing, right?
Sure, absolutely.
And nothing? He's like, no, I'm not giving them anything. And anyway, that next morning, if they watch this, that I never had this story with them. Yeah. But anyway, what happened is I told them, I asked them, I said, based upon what I see, you guys are doing this kind of revenue. And he made more at the event that they did. And I knew that, because I could see what sales were going on, what they were selling. They were selling on coaching on an hourly basis versus a program. And I said, would you guys like to get together? Because I've got some ideas that you can implement in your business. And they're like, well, we're done today. Then we'll be with our family. I said, you want to meet for brunch tomorrow? And they said, okay. So we met with our families. We all went together for brunch. And then we set up an appointment, I remember, on Tuesday afternoon. And we had a frank discussion, and I mapped out for them, how I like mapping things out.
Absolutely.
And reading the blueprint. I mapped out for them what it could be. And there was silence. And I said, I guess it's kind of scary when you actually see your vision can actually be achieved in the time frame. They're like, that's gonna be a lot of work. I said, don't worry about that. I can help you with that. And I said, they're like, well, what do you want to get paid? And I told them. And I said, here's my commitment. I truly believe. I said, at that next event, you'll do about $250,000. Okay. Or more. And they didn't believe me. At that next event, we did $750,000.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And we've been together.
Up from probably whether it made around 25 or something like that the first time.
Yeah.
So I don't know what the percentage is, but that's a lot. So.
Yeah. So, you know, and it wasn't because they made more money, because they put systems in place and programs in place to serve their audience better. And so anyway,
so let's take a look at that. Let's take a look at that for 1 second. So you came in, you saw, first of all, you didn't take no. When the guy, I remember you didn't tell all the story, but I remember the guy didn't want you to pick him up from the airport. You told him you were picking him up anyway. So you went and picked him up. And then the other guy told you to pretty much hit the road. And then the doctors invited you back. And you even tried to push back and tell him no.
Yeah, I said, well, I looked back and I looked at him. I said, I looked at him because he told me no. And he's like, he said, they invited you. So I said, okay, I'll be there.
Yeah. So at that point in time, you not only then had a meeting with them, but you provided them with a vision. And I see that's one of your true gifts when you sit down with people and work on their businesses, is that help really paint that future, because oftentimes people just can't see it.
Yeah.
You know? And it's like they're in the forest and on their business on that side of it. You see it a lot of times, entrepreneurs, they just don't have the clarity.
I mean, in our own businesses.
Yeah.
I mean, think about it. When I needed clarity on writing the book that I'm writing right now, I mean, you gave me full clarity by asking questions.
Absolutely.
And I mean, I couldn't have done that. I probably could have done it myself, but in our own business, we're in our own lives, we're in the weeds. And when we're in the weeds, we can't see clarity.
Yeah. I think you mentioned that you've been working to write that book for 2 years.
Yeah.
And I got it out of you in an hour. You know,
actually, it's about 2.5 hours of total recording time.
2.5 hours.
Yeah. But when you think about it, you know, the biggest challenge that most people quit right before they're successful.
3 feet from gold.
Yeah, 3 feet from gold. So it's sort of like, you know, if you can see it and then believe it, and you have the persistence, you can achieve it.
Absolutely. That's Gold Nugget right there. So Dave, what is the biggest, you know, a lot of people they call it failure. You know, what would you say is the biggest feedback you've actually got in your business? So I don't see that there's failure in life. There's only feedback. You did something, you didn't get actually what you wanted. What would you say is the number one feedback you would take away from all your time being an entrepreneur, you know, and just life in general? What's the biggest piece of feedback you'd have for somebody out there who's getting started in their business and they're out there just trying to make it right now? What's a gold nugget you could drop on them?
Have a mentor or coach that can help you through the tough times, because we're all going to have them. And it's sort of like a roller coaster. You go up and you get this high, and then all of a sudden, you know, many times people go here and then they go up again and they go down. And what you want is a coach. So when you start going down, instead of going down, you leap over to the next up phase. And having that mentor or guide or someone, you know, the number one thing, if people think it's crazy, you know, what's the number one thing you need to do to be successful in your business? Work on your mindset. Mm-hmm. Because it's the one thing that holds people back, that sabotages them when they experience the success. I mean, think about how many people do you know, and I know you worked with a lot of people on this, that all of a sudden they have success and then they keep sabotaging. They create wealth and then they sabotage it. They create wealth, they sabotage it. Why? Because they didn't take the time to focus in on here. And you know what's interesting? I started working on my mind when I was 16 years old. And I realized how powerful it was for me. Did I ever tell you the story?
No.
My parents were going through a divorce were divorced. And it was a bad divorce. A lot of blaming, a lot of pointing fingers. And, you know, it was interesting just talking to my sister about it. It's like almost like I felt like I was responsible. I don't know why, but you know, she thought she was. I thought, you know, it's kids, right? Yeah. And maybe because I was rude to my dad and told him off one time but you know, it was a teenager thing. And anyway, what happened was I was in a bad place, and I walked into Walden Books, which I'm dating myself because they're not around anymore. I don't think they were in the malls back then. And I walked in the bookstore, and as I was walking in, I went to the self-help aisle. I don't know why. I was 16 years old, and I went to the self-help aisle, and I saw a bunch of books. And then they had this little circular rack of cassette tapes, okay? And one of those was Increasing Self-Confidence by Dr. David Illig of Success World. By the way, that was his voice when he said, "Hi, this is Dr. David Illig of Success World." And I remember that because I listened to that every night. And it was one of those old Panasonic tape recorders that after 30 minutes, it would pop up and wake you up kind of thing, because, you know, the old ones, and then you'd flip it over. I remember listening to that day in, day out. And all of a sudden, within about 30, 45, 60 days, I became like a different person. So you ask, where does my confidence come from? It comes in on continuously working myself. Still to this day, every night before I go to bed, I decide, what do I need to work on tonight? And I've got a whole arsenal of recordings. Some of them I've created for myself that I choose that night. What am I going to work on? While I'm sleeping, my mind's going to work on something. Don't know what it is, but that right before I go to bed, I know what it is.
So most people watch the 10 o'clock news or 11 o'clock news about the latest shooting, and you're thinking about, how can I actually make myself better for the next day?
That's the last thing I think about before I go to bed every night.
That's a big gold nugget right there. So guys, take note of that. David, what is some, if you have any last tips for the entrepreneurs, or the one thing you could actually, you know, teach, if you could write a letter to your younger self, you know, 20 years ago when you first started doing entrepreneurship or starting out in a business, what's the conversation? What would you actually have with yourself at that point in time?
Take even bigger and bolder actions. I mean, that's it. Just take
go big or go home. So
go big, go big, you know, go big, go big, go big. And it's interesting, as I'm telling you this, all of a sudden I get chills because I'm like, I got so much more to give.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Tell us some of the big BHAG goals you got this year.
There's a few things, and I didn't create a big, you know what? I'm going to sit down this weekend and create a big, hairy, audacious goal around it, because I haven't yet. So every time I do, everything changes. So this weekend, thank you, Daryl. I'm going to create my BHAG. And so there's a couple different things. One, I'm writing a book called, it's either going to be Monetize It or Go Monetize It. My tagline now for the company is Go Monetize It. For both companies. I have two companies, Business Oxygen, which is the consulting, and Business Nitrogen, where we do organic search, we do marketing funnels, websites, everything about online digital marketing, traffic conversion, revenue and profits. My big goal, though, is to launch Monetize It. I've already built a monetization academy. We're going to go with monetization TV. So I'm going to have interview experts like yourself, and we're going to do sort of what we're doing right now. And then I've got the academy where we're going to have a free version, and then we're going to have the academy where people can get snippets and ask me questions once a month to work on their business. And then I've got the bigger goal, which is with the book launch, we're going to do the monetization summit. And frankly, all the internet properties are already built. I just got to write the book now. So that's a big goal of mine.
Awesome, man. Well, where's the best place that somebody can get a hold of you if they wanted to monetize their business?
If you want to monetize your business, in fact, most businesses are leaking profits, and on businessnitrogen.com. So it's really easy. Business Nitrogen, Nitrogen.com. Right there on the front of the page, you can go take a monetization quiz and see where your business stands as far as the top 1%. And based upon the quiz answers, I'll tell you different things that you can do in order to increase that for yourself, and increase your profitability, that leverage, and make more money.
Awesome, guys. We'll put that in the show notes, and we'll put the links all the way down there. David, thanks for your time today and spending it with us.
It's a pleasure to be here.
All right, bro. See you later.
Thanks.
Bye.